Hello. Hello. I don't like my hair. Hello. I look so not like myself today. Hello. Hey, y'all. Gonna get set up over here for Instagram. I'm late. That is a fact. I am late again. Don't like that, but here we are. Late again. Bruh. I look like a teacher from the 80s right now. Oh, okay. Mm-mm. Instagram always does that. Instagram does that every time. Mm. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. We in here. What's up, y'all? What's up? What's up? We here. We finished a book yesterday, and we here today on a new book. Welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome in. Hey, y'all. Dang, y'all in here. I was late. My bad, y'all. My bad. My bad. Happy Black History Month, people. I have showed up today looking like the African American Studies teacher at mm-hmm, at a high school in the 80s. Oh no. I got this. I did get this at like a little like witch store or whatever. It's a shungite necklace. I never know what the tree means. I always forget to find out what the tree means. But it's that little tree thing, and it's a stone for protection, and it also helps with like when you're doing like spiritual work. Thank you. When you're doing spiritual work, it increases, like if you're being a witch and stuff and you're doing things and spells, it increases your psychic powers during those things. It's I like wearing it when I'm doing stuff. When I'm doing the stuff that I like to do. Thank you. Mm. Y'all want to know the truth of why I've been late for the last 2 days? I always make the mistake of taking a nap at 3:30. I always make that mistake. And then I'm like, oh, okay, 3:30, 4 o'clock, I can take a nap. I can push in an hour of sleep. 5 o'clock comes and I'm just like, 5 more minutes. And I do that 6 times. And then it's 5:30. And now I have to get up and get everything put together and stuff. And it's just one of these days I'm gonna get that part of it together. And then we're gonna be in here on time and all kinds of stuff. And it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. But we're starting a new book today. We are starting Taste of Power. The people have voted. The people have voted. And we are reading Taste of Power. I was really my African American studies nerd was like, oh, let them pick the book about Reconstruction. Please let them pick the book about Reconstruction. I was really hoping that y'all would pick the book about Reconstruction. However, the people have chosen A Taste of Power. Um, and boy, is it going to be a doozy. It's actually, this is about Elaine Brown. This is about Elaine Brown. This is all about her time as the president of the Black Panther Party. Maybe one of these days we'll read. After this, we're definitely going to read this. And y'all are going to listen to a book about Reconstruction. And it might bore some of y'all to tears. However, it's going to be good. I promise you. It's going to be a great read whenever we get to it. But we're reading Taste of Power. Taste of Power is what the people have voted on. So That is what we're reading today, and I appreciate y'all being here. I appreciate y'all being here. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. I'm, I'm very excited about this though. When I was a student, I was very good at half reading and participating in discussion with very little knowledge, just kind of picking up intuitively on what the conversation is talking about, being able to spin that thing and still engage in really great discussion and make my teachers believe that I was doing what I was supposed to do when I was at home. I was not. I was not. I was not reading my books. I was pulling papers out of nowhere. I don't even know how I wrote some of these papers. Wasn't reading. I was a Cliff Note queen. That's why I don't have a degree now. Read your books. Read your books. Read the book. Read the book. And come to class. Those two things are really important when you're in college. Reading the book and going to class. Everything else will kind of just happen for you if you read the books and go to class. The papers, they won't write themselves, but if you put effort towards it and meet the requirements for the number of words and citations, you got a paper. Anyway, we are 6 minutes and 40 seconds in, so let's go ahead and get started. We are reading Elaine Brown's A Taste of Power. Welcome to Reading with Miss Taylor Said, ladies and gents, and MBs alike, and non-binary, and trans, and whoever is here. Welcome to Reading with Miss Taylor Said. I am Taylor, also known as Miss Taylor Said, and I started this show. I started the show on November 30th in an effort to complete some goals that I have. One of those goals being to actually read the books that I own. I own a lot of books, like I was just explaining. I have accumulated a lot of books from college, books that I bought, books that I already had, books that have been given to me. I've accumulated a lot of books. I've started quite a few of them, haven't started a lot of them also, and I have not finished most of them. So I want to actually finish the books that I own. That is one reason why I'm doing the show. Another reason why I'm doing the show is because the career and the things that I want to do in my future will involve me reading off of a teleprompter because I want to go into public speaking in some shape, form, or fashion. So I will be reading off of a teleprompter. I want to get more comfortable with reading in front of an audience with, the proper inflections and on cue and all the things. So I will I am doing that to get more comfortable with reading aloud in front of an audience. And the third thing that I want to do with my show is get more comfortable with public speaking again. That was something that I used to do when I was in high school and college, and I got away from it in my adult life. And it's something that's really important to me and something I really enjoy. And I want to get back to practicing it, which this platform has provided a way for me to do that. Even though it's virtually, it's practice nonetheless. So thank you guys for showing up to my show. And welcome to Reading with Miss Taylor Said. Like I said, we finished our first book, Abundance Now by Lisa Nichols, yesterday. All of the episodes, if you missed any of the previous episodes, you can go to the on Instagram, go to the link in my bio. You'll find those first like 2 weeks of episodes that are not on IGTV up there, and then the rest of the episodes are on IGTV. If you're on Facebook, if you look at Reading with Miss Taylor Said, go all the way down to November 30th. That's the first video, and then just go in chronological order from there. It's not super organized because the first few weeks were on my personal Facebook page, and then the rest of them are on the Miss Taylor Said Facebook page. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get into A Taste of Power. Now, on the cover of the book, you see different images from the Black Panther Party. You see Huey P. Newton here. And I want to say this is Elaine right here. I am not completely sure. I'm not about to start lying. But Elaine Brown is up here. She is up here. On the front, there is a quote by Kirkus Reviews. It says, "A stunning picture of a Black woman's coming of age in America. Put it on the shelf beside the autobiography of Malcolm X." So, A Taste of Power, a Black woman's story. Excited about this one, y'all. She dedicated this book. She said, for Erica Suzanne Brown, thank you for the gift of life. Some acknowledgments. The introduction says, this is a chronicle of the life of a Black woman child in America. It is my life. Reflected here is life as I lived it, my thoughts and feelings as I remember them. Here, too, are my personal exchanges with others. In reconstructing them, I have relied on my knowledge of opinions held and my recollection of articulated ideas and very specific words in their context. Memory seems a fragile spirit. It may be a river of reality that gathers dreams and desires and change in its flow. Nevertheless, I have tried to be faithful to both fact and feeling. I like that. I hope there isn't anything wrong on Facebook because I mean, I'm, not trying to be weird or anything like that, but it's not normal for nobody to be watching on Facebook. So I am going to share this on Facebook really fast on my personal page, and then we'll get going. I'm going to close all this stuff. Sorry, y'all. This is a one lady operation. And if the lady in charge is not all the way right, then the operation isn't all the way right. So let me go ahead and share this. And then we will get into the book. Share now. All right. Done. Okay. The chapter 1, Assumption. I have all the guns and all the money. I can withstand challenge from without and from within. Am I right, comrade? Larry snapped back his answer to my rhetorical question. Right on! His muscular body tilted slightly as he adjusted the .45 automatic pistol under his jacket. I was standing on the stage with him at my side. Several of the key brothers from the security squads were standing just in back of us. To my left, I could feel Big Bob, Huey Newton's personal bodyguard, all 6 feet 8 inches and 400 pounds of him. In front of me, extending all the way to the back of the auditorium, were several hundred other members of the Black Panther Party, a sea of predominantly male faces. They were Black men and women from the party's central committee and from various local leadership cadres. From the west side of Chicago and from North Philadelphia, Harlem, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and elsewhere. They had come to Oakland this August of 1974 at my command. I watched them carefully, noting that no one moved in response to my opening remarks. Here I was, a woman, proclaiming supreme power over the most militant organization in America. It felt natural to me. I had spent the last 7 years as a dedicated member of the Black Panther Party and the last 4 at Huey's right hand. I haven't called you together to make threats, comrades, I continued. I've called this meeting simply to let you know the realities of our situation. The fact is, Comrade Huey is in exile. The other fact is, I'm taking his place until we make it possible for him to return. I allowed them a moment to grasp the full meaning of my words. I'm telling you this because it's possible some of you may balk at a woman as the leader of the Black Panther Party. I paused and took a deep breath. If this is your attitude, you better get out of the Black Panther Party now. I'm saying this also because there may be some individuals in our ranks who have private ambitions and, in Comrade Huey's absence, may imagine themselves capable of some kind of coup. I paused again. No one spoke. Cocking my head to the side, I continued in a manner I knew was required. If you're such an individual, you'd better run, and fast. I am, as your chairman, the leader of this party of this moment. My leadership cannot be challenged. I will lead our party both above ground and underground. I will lead the party not only in furthering our goals, but also in defending the party by any and all means. They understood. 2 months ago, I had been named chairman, making me the second ranking member of the Central Committee. I was then titularly second only to the Minister of Defense, who was Huey. The reality was that Huey Newton was the absolute leader of the Black Panther Party. I was now his replacement. They understood. Together, we are going to move this revolution forward by leaps and bounds, though mindful, of course, that we may have to take one step backward in order to take two steps forward. Specifically, as we had begun to do before Comrade Huey's forced exile, we're going to continue the consolidation of our efforts in one city, this city. Oakland is the birthplace of this party. Oakland will be the birthplace of revolution in the United States, and that will be so despite the pigs. It will be so despite any petty despots who claim to be our comrades. It will be so despite the criticisms of the infantile leftists who have accomplished nothing. It will be done despite the voodoo drums of the so-called Black nationalists. I watched a few of the brothers slap their palms together in common recognition. A subdued laughter of agreement rippled through the auditorium. I began to walk up and down the stage, purposely emphasizing my words with the sound of my heels of my black leather boots. I punctuated each sentence with a nod to one or another of the soldiers standing on the stage with me, backing me up. It will be done because they can exile a revolutionary leader, but they cannot exile the revolution. We will move forward with due speed. I repeat, I have control over all the guns and all the money of this party. There will be no external or internal opposition. I will not resist and put down. I will deal resolutely with anyone or anything that stands in the way. So if you don't like it, if you don't like the fact that I am a woman, if you don't like what we're going to do, here is your chance to leave. You better leave because you won't be tolerated. I gestured towards Larry. Comrade Larry Henson is our new chief of staff. He is my replacement for June Hilliard, who has been expelled. He followed too closely in the footsteps of the former chairman of our party, Bobby Seale. Don't be afraid of these changes, comrades. After all, change is what we seek. As Chairman Mao said, let 1,000 revolutions bloom. Change is good. We have to welcome change. Those who resist change will be swept away in the irrelevant dust of history. There was a loud chorus of right on. Together, we're going to take this city. We will make it a base of revolution. The pigs will look at us and wonder. They will look at us, but they will be unable to deal with us. We're going to set a revolutionary example here. And the example we lay down in Oakland will be the spark that lights the prairie fire. We will carry our torch to another city and then another. Each time, each place, the people will take their lead from us, the revolutionary vanguard. Just as the people have demanded and institutionalized our free breakfast for children and sickle cell anemia programs, they will begin socialized medicine and decent housing. Soon they will begin to take control of their local political machinery. Then they will attack the economic structure in each city. Bit by bit, city by city, they will whittle away at the capitalistic foundation. Eventually, a time will come, not in our lifetimes, comrades, but a time will come when the people will understand their power and the pigs' machinery will be unable to accommodate their demands. That is when the people, Black people and poor white people and oppressed people all over America will rise up like a mighty tide and wash clean this beachfront of capitalism and racism and make the revolution. They began to applaud loudly, then louder, and then suddenly they were standing. The sisters and the brothers were on their feet. When the ovation was over and they were seated, I released my pent-up breath and continued. For now, comrades, we must take the next step. We must make Oakland a base camp for revolution. This is why we can have no internal strife. We have to get moving. Let's get busy then, comrades. Return to your chapters and branches throughout the country with renewed dedication. Soon, the Central Committee will be issuing orders and reports regarding the status of each chapter. Many of you and your people will be called back to the base. Let us get busy and prepare a place for the return of Comrade Huey. Let us get busy and prepare a place for the introduction of revolution. I raised my fist in the air and shouted, all power to the people, Black Panther power to the vanguard. They leaped to their feet, fist raised in salute. Power to the people, power to the people, power to the people. The feeling that washed over me as I spoke was baptismal. There was something in that moment that seemed a reparation for all the rage and pain of my life. Ironically, I had come to it from an abysmal hopelessness experienced less than 2 weeks before. Charles Gary, Huey's attorney, and I had been waiting at the Alameda County Jail to take Huey home. Gwen, whom Huey had begun referring to as his wife, to my disgust, was also there, waiting. We were watching Huey. He was pacing up and down the holding cell that occupied a corner of the police processing room. He was restlessly enduring the business of being bailed out. I caught a familiar look of the arrogant satisfaction on his face. Fuck Collins, his slight smile said. Collins was a black tailor who had solicited business from Huey. He wanted to make suits for Huey and certain other brothers in the party. Collins had, however, refused Huey's request that he discount those suits. Collins had also confronted Huey with his profit problems, and in Huey's own apartment, there had been a bloody fight. Huey had been arrested and charged with pistol whipping Collins. That had been earlier in the evening. Now we had to come bail Huey out. While I noted Huey's irreverent attitude about the whole affair, it occurred to me how little I, too, actually cared about Collins. He was neither a man nor a victim to me. I had come to believe everything would balance out in the revolutionary end. I also knew that being concerned about Collins was too costly, particularly in terms of my position in the party. Yes, I thought, fuck Collins. On the other hand, I did not feel any urgency about getting Huey released from jail. I needed a rest from him. To say that I loved Huey, however, even at that moment, would be to say too little. I loved being loved by him. I loved the protection he offered with his powerful arms and fearless dreams. I loved how beautiful he was, sinewy and sultry at once. I loved his genius and his bold uses of it. I loved that he was the vicarious dream of a man that white men hid from themselves, except when he confronted them, their rules, their world. I loved his narrow buttocks and his broad shoulders and his clean skin. I loved being queen in his world, for he had fashioned a new world for those who dared. Yet I had come to hate life with him. His madness had become as full blown as his genius. The numerous swaggering dicks who had challenged the hero to prove his manhood had finally taken their toll. Now he had outdone them all, including himself. It was taking an inordinate amount of time for the release process to be completed. Gary and Gwen and I passed the hours with irrelevant chatter and frequent glances at the clock on the wall, which was nearing 2 in the morning. It was uncharacteristic of the Oakland Police Department to trifle with Huey Newton, even though they had once been considered the most brutal police force in California. That was several years before, however, before Huey's trial for the killing of one of their brothers, Officer Free. The Free Huey campaign that erupted on the heels of that charge had dominated the nation's headlines and had devastated the local police. While Huey became a national hero, the Oakland Police Department became a defeated little army. When Huey was finally released from the holding cell, I watched him stride across the room in all his late night beauty. As always, I consciously sensed my first surrender to him. I forgot the recent madness, remembering other times. The mild growth on his face stung as he embraced me in the same powerful way he always did. He hugged Gary as Gwen put a jacket around his shoulders. I signaled Gwen to go outside to summon Larry and Big Bob so they could bring Huey's car to the front of the building. That was when the Oakland police demonstrated what had taken them so long. Mr. Newton, hold it, please, Captain something or the other said, seeming to emerge from thin air. He had 2 sidekicks with him. Everybody in the station turned to face him, including the other police. Huey glared at the captain, bracing his body for a fight. Gary stepped forward protectively. What do you want? Mr. Houghton is very tired. Mr. Newton, you are under arrest for the violation of California Penal Code for the attempted murder of, on the night of, the captain stated in police ease. There was a note lurking in his tone that said this charge was what they had been waiting for ever since Huey had triumphantly slipped from their grasp. The captain's sidekicks clamped handcuffs on the anti-hero. The charge concerned the shooting of a 17-year-old black girl who was an Oakland streetwalker. She had been shot several days before and was in a coma. The words attempted murder erased the smugness from Huey's face. I thought I saw a flash of genuine fear in his eyes. A few seconds later, he looked overwhelmed by hopelessness. It was just before they returned him to the recesses of the police building. There was a hopelessness hanging in the air, too. None of us knew quite what to do next. When they finally allowed us to see Huey after he was booked again, the terror was gone. He was back in a holding cell and back to himself. He had obviously made some instant calculation that would never ride out the storm he would never ride out the storm that would come from the attempted murder charge. He had, I felt, developed a plan to survive it. Raise the bell by morning, Huey commanded. He was speaking to me quietly but intensely, having pulled me to the side. I sighed, spoke carefully. Tomorrow morning. Not this morning. Tomorrow morning? Not this morning. I can't possibly. Tomorrow, then. He smiled, satisfied. Tomorrow we can be in paradise. Gary smelled a protracted legal battle, with its attendant headlines eased over the side of the cell where Huey and I were standing. He whispered legal strategies to Huey's faraway glance. Gwen softly, stolidly in place, wearing a strained look of sorrow. I contemplated how only a week before I had been planning to leave the party forever. It was just after Huey had done to me what was commonplace inside our dangerous ranks. He struck me. It was a slap in my face after I had made an innocuous remark. Huey had not so much as raised his voice in anger to me prior to that, not even in the last month, when the snares of his madness had left so many others maimed. We were in the penthouse apartment, where I had gone to tell him something the police monitored telephone's lines should not carry. When I arrived, a brother was being disciplined on a charge of stealing from the party. I ignored the bloody face of the thief, as I learned to do. I had become hardened to such things, like a Green Beret who learns to think nothing of taking a life. After seeing so many training films on brutal killings, he is no longer repulsed by blood or brutality. I ignored the blood streaming from the nose and mouth of the seated suspect as Huey's security people punished him. I noticed only how cold the apartment was. The cold made me ponder the reason why Huey always kept the windows and sliding glass doors of his 25th floor penthouse wide open. Sometimes I had the chilling sense that those open windows and doors meant somebody would be tossed off the apartment's many balconies. Recently, it occurred to me more than once that one day it could be me. Huey stopped interrogating the thief to talk to me. Typically, he was wearing only a pair of pants, no shirt. His body glistened with the sweat of cocaine abuse. He had probably been up for the last 48 hours. His strength shone through nevertheless, still stunning. Perhaps I loved him too much, I thought. Before I could tell Huey why I had come, he spoke to me in a sort of stage whisper. Elaine, it's important that you go back to your music. I want you to study music seriously. The party will pay for everything. His eyes were glazed. They darted back and forth, almost uncontrollably. What he said to me had nothing to do with anything. I tried to hide my bewilderment, my fear. Thank you, Huey, I said anxiously, wanting only to get out of there. He raised his hand suddenly and smacked me across the face. Then, clenching my jaw with one hand, he pulled me near him with his other, our noses almost touching. In a careful staccato, he said, "Don't ever thank me." When you thank me, it means you are separate from me, not with me. Within seconds, my mind began to piece together a roadmap out, away from him and the party. I knew the signals. There had been more than enough. I would simply take my daughter Erica to visit with my mother in Los Angeles, as we had done on numerous occasions. We would slip away. Soon, I decided. It was only a few days later that Collins was beaten up and Huey was arrested. That had brought me a bit of time to think. Now none of it seemed to matter, for everything seemed over. With a sense of futility, I gathered the cash and collateral from the party's various bank accounts and properties to pay Huey's second $80,000 bail. When he was released, I met him at the bail bondsman's office, where he had to sign various forms. Gwen was with him, clinging to his arm. He reached out and hugged me warmly and whispered in my ear, "Goodbye." My eyes closed over tears. I might not ever see him again. His resolve to flee was in his embrace. There was no sound Huey could make, or word he could speak, or feeling he could harbor that I did not understand in my soul. He would be silent on the details of his departure, a necessary protection for all of us. He would find refuge beyond the United States. Panthers had already done so. In Cuba, in Algeria, the revolutionary Third World would welcome its famous brother from the belly of the beast. He would surely be taking Gwen, whom I considered his little apolitical strumpet and loyal servant. I blinked away my momentary resentment, conscious that I would never last in the role of Huey's woman. He looked into my eyes and we smiled at each other. Nobody spoke again. Huey knew what was required for his survival. Damn the party, the politics, the rhetoric, and the dreaded dependency of everyone, including the masses. He was unburdening himself. He was the parent running away from the child. If he ever returned, he might be forgiven. For the first few nights after Huey vanished from Oakland, Big Bob, Larry, and I spent most of our time trying to figure out how to handle his absence. In the party and in the press. He was scheduled to make a court appearance in the next 2 weeks. We debated if we could carry off the folly of Father Divine's people, who had for years convinced his flock and everyone else that Father was alive, though he was really dead. It was during one of those sessions that the whole thing resolved itself. Larry, Bob, and I were sitting in a booth at the Lamp Post, a bar and restaurant the party operated. A telephone call came for me. I went behind the bar to take it. It was Huey. "Save my party," he commanded. His voice was low but passionate. "I won't be back. You're the only one who can do it. You are mine. I can't trust anybody else with my party." "I can't without serious backup," I heard myself say, my tongue dry with both fear and excitement. "You know, the brothers will never accept it," I continued, turning away from the patrons on the other side of the bar. "Let me speak to my man," Huey said, referring to Big Bob. "That won't work," I said quietly, amazing myself with how quickly and emphatically I had responded. "You decide then." "Larry," I whispered. "Is he there?" "Yes." I turned and motioned to Larry to come to the bar. I handed him the telephone, indicating who it was. He took it with reverence. "Yes, sir, brother," he said into the telephone. Then, "I hear you, brother. I guarantee it." Then, "With my life, comrade, you have my word." He handed the telephone back to me. "Now, will you save my party?" Huey whispered. Yes. It was done. While Huey repaired himself, I would hold and resurrect life from what seemed nearly dead. As I considered the seriousness of it, I realized I had made the cardinal decision wisely. I needed Larry. Politics and war are inseparable in a fascist state, the beautiful George Jackson had said. We could have no revolution in the fascist state of America without an army. Our army was presently in disarray. Larry was a general. It was true that Big Bob had been Huey's bodyguard, and in that his loyalty to Huey was unfaltering. It was also true that Bob had accepted leadership from a woman, Audrea Jones, when he was in the Boston branch. Bob's physical size, however, 6 feet 8 inches and 400 pounds, combined with his emotional insecurity about it and his lack of self discipline, made a volatile concoction. He was simply not the stuff of generals. In the ensuing week or so, the correctness of my decision was fully borne out. The three of us constantly together during that time, trying to understand for ourselves the nature of the Black Panther Party that Huey had abandoned. We decided to postpone the inevitability of holding a general leadership meeting of all of our chapters for as long as possible. We had to first shore up the party's operations in Oakland, our national headquarters. Primarily, we concluded we had to eliminate any potentially negative reactions on the streets to Huey's disappearance. Huey Newton had been an awe inspiring figure on those streets. News of his absence would create havoc for us. We began by riding the avenues of Oakland's subcultures every night to inform them that a shift in party leadership would not release them. Homage would still have to be paid. Blacks operating in Oakland, inside or outside the law, knew it was impossible to get around the party. In our revolution, one had one had literally to be part of the solution or part of the problem. No one on the streets of Oakland could withstand being the latter, with or without Huey. That was our nightly message. We visited a Black-owned bar one night and were seated at a table adjacent to where a notoriously loud, rowdy fellow sat. He immediately launched into a loud conversation among his friends in which he referred to Big Bob as Fat Boy. Two women at his table started to snicker. Bob stood up. Larry and I also had to stand. Bob walked over to the man and smacked him with the back of his oversized hand, hurling him across the entire room over tables and glasses of scotch and vodka on the rocks. The loudmouth cohorts jumped up as Larry reached under his jacket for his 45 and I reached into my purse for my snub-nosed 38. We were forced to back out of the place like gangsters in a third-rate movie. That was when I knew that Bob was a monumental miasma I could never have restrained. My decision to place Larry in the recently vacated slot of chief of staff was eventually validated in other ways. I came to realize, for example, that Larry was more respected by the brothers in the security squads than any of the other men who had been in positions of leadership, including Huey, whom few of them knew at all. Moreover, Larry showed initiative. It seemed he intuitively developed intelligent plans for the systemization, housing, and maintenance and care of our military inventory, which had been left in disarray since the expulsion of David Hillier's brother, June, the previous chief of staff. Moreover, Larry seemed to know as much as anyone, including those who had seen combat in Vietnam, how to use the vast array of weapons we found we had. Every Panther property housed weapons. It was our most basic requirement. Some houses were virtual arsenals. As I began reviewing with Larry and Bob the various operations in the Northern California Bay Area, I was stunned by the magnitude of the party's weaponry. In Richmond, Berkeley, San Francisco, San Jose, as well as in Oakland and other cities in the area, there were huge stashes. There were literally thousands of weapons. There were large numbers of AR-18s and AR-18 short automatic rifles, 308 scoped rifles, 30-30 Winchesters, 375 Magnums, and other big game rifles, 30 caliber Garans, M15s and M16s, and other assorted automatic and semi-automatic rifles, Thompson submachine guns, M59 Santa Fe Troopers, Boys 55 caliber anti-tank guns, M60 fully automatic machine guns, innumerable shotguns, and M75 grenade launchers. There were suitcases, trunk loads, closets full of pistols such as Astra and Browning 9 millimeters and 45 automatics, .38s, .375 Magnums, .41 and .44 Magnums. There were boxes and boxes of ammunition and large supplies of accessories such as rifle scopes, including some infrareds, silencing devices, tripods, and interchangeable pistol barrels. There were caches of crossbows and arrows, grenades, and miscellaneous explosive materials and devices. As I watched the adroitness and precision with which Larry organized the brothers and the security squad to inventory, classify, clean, and relocate every single item, I became more convinced than ever I had made the first and most important decision correctly. If you're just now joining us, we are reading A Taste of Power by Elaine Brown. We're reading A Taste of Power by Elaine Brown. She was the first woman to be in charge of the Black Panther Party back in 1974. Um, There were other problems, however, that would have to be resolved before we could make the announcement of Huey's exile and my leadership to the general meeting. Most of them centered on the fact that the Black Panther Party had really been Huey's party all along. I had been too close to him to see that before. Even if Bobby Seale or June or David Hilliard or some other Central Committee member dismissed in the last month or so of rage had been there, it would have been irrelevant. Huey alone had known and controlled all the pieces. He had manipulated the party so that no one person knew everything except himself. Thus, while Larry inventoried weapons and such, I scrambled to locate and review the party's numerous bank accounts and real property and other records, scattered through our national headquarters office and other party offices and facilities. Finally, I was forced to contemplate the most serious problem, the probability of internal conflict over my leadership. In that connection, I felt Chicago might present a problem. I knew Los Angeles did. Southern California, where I had joined the party, no longer had an official chapter of the Black Panther Party. Everything in the area was completely underground. That is, the Panthers there had no overt party affiliation. They lived, for all intents and purposes, like ordinary people. However, they warehoused large arsenals of party weapons, with which they secretly bolstered the enforcement of our political will. The leader of that very tough and loyal sector in Southern California was an arrogant madman with whom I had a serious confrontation some time before. On smelling Huey's absence, he drove up to Oakland with 3 of his men and several of his guns, only a week after Huey left. Like a buzzard, Steve strutted into the lamppost without warning. I watched him from a distance. I watched the absurd show of his men removing his coat, ordering his favorite cognac, and inspecting the other patrons for his security. He was my nightmare. It had come too soon. I knew it was ultimately inescapable, but the test had come too soon. I had no real idea yet whether Larry was capable of loyalty to my leadership, especially when faced with such a pretender as Steve, a brother, another man. As we walked over to Steve's table, I breathed deeply and ordered Larry to follow my lead. Larry would, I hoped, follow through. So the brother's gone, Steve said, smirk on his lips. He lifted his cognac glass to me in a mock toast as Larry and I slid into the booth next to him. We want to talk to you alone, Steve, I said firmly, concealing my trepidation as best I could. I glared at the other LA Panthers who got up. Long time no see, sister, he smiled, perfect white teeth glistening. He leaned back into the luxurious red leather of the booth, which matched the bar's deep pile carpeting. What are you doing here? I said. You're not supposed to come here, and you know it. You have to go. I wanted to find out what was happening, sister. I heard nobody had seen the servant since he got bailed out, he said, referring to Huey. That's not the point, brother, Larry said. The comrade had just told you can't be here. Get on up. Huey made me a don, brother, he stated with a wave of his hand as if it held a scepter. I have my own operation. Nobody tells me what to do. It all happened in a flash. Larry reached under his jacket, simultaneously motioning to the other brothers in the lamppost with a nod. Big Bob came over. Shoving his .45 under the table towards Steve, Larry spit up, "Nah, nigga. You gonna have to be gone now. Bury your ass in LA. Can you dig it? This is bullshit. I want to speak directly to the servant. Where is he? Or is he really gone? You're talking to him now, brother, Larry said. When you talk to the sister here, you're talking to Huey Newton. It could have gotten uglier, but Steve knew. His people knew. Larry had to let them know. Steve removed himself and his small entourage from the lamppost that night. In a few days, he would slip out of Oakland back to his underground home in Los Angeles. That was the only part of the madness I had just inherited. That was only part of the madness I had just inherited. The Black Panther Party was the target of the most violent aggression of the police forces in America. Though battered and floundering, it was still breathing fire. It was at once a lion to be tamed and a terrible sword of freedom to be honed. In August 1974, when I assumed leadership, the Black Panther Party was the only armed revolutionary organization operating inside the United States of America. There were several thousand diehard troops in Oakland and throughout California and in nearly every state of the Union. There was, of course, our expansive arsenal of weapons and the clandestine underground operating out of every chapter. Brothers trained in Vietnam and on the wretched streets of America who could and would use violence to carry out our political objectives. There was nearly $1 million in our coffers. There was a staggering amount of party-owned real properties and a massive inventory of supplies and vehicles. There was the income from posh parties and ghetto streets and the new contributions of the working Black community, now aligned more strongly than ever with the goals of the party. There were the financial contributions of party members themselves from earned and other income and revenue from sales of various items produced by the party, including our newspaper. There was the party's history of daring and power, which has given rise to its nationwide international support by millions of Blacks and other people. There were the hundreds of thousands of people, Black people and Latino people and Asian people and white people who participated in or benefited from our free food programs, our free medical clinics and legal aid programs, our prison programs, our school and education programs, our service programs for seniors and teens and abused children and battered women and homeless people. There were the thousands who participated in our Vietnam veterans and workers' rights projects. There were the thousands throughout the United States who read our weekly newspaper through individual school and library subscriptions, and the thousands of others who subscribed to our newspaper outside of the US in China, North Korea, East Germany, Cuba, and elsewhere. There were the numerous Panther support groups formed by whites in the United States and people in Japan, Italy, France, Sweden, Denmark, and other countries, even including Israel. There were our numerous coalitions with progressive organizations inside the United States and revolutionary movements throughout the world, particularly in Africa, both north and south of the Sahara. As I prepared to make my announcement that afternoon when I formally asserted absolute leadership over the party, I recognized that it was an exhilarating madness I had inherited. The Black Panther Party Huey had left in my charge was still a force to be reckoned with. There was no question in my mind that it had to be saved. As I began to speak to my comrades, I recommitted myself to pushing forward our struggle and the complete freedom of Black people in America. I recommitted my life to the party to fulfill its purpose of introducing socialist revolution in the United States, whether or not Huey returned. I believed with everything in me that it could be done. I believed with everything in me that I could do it. Welcome in. Welcome in, y'all. I just finished chapter 1 of A Taste of Power. I'm going to move on to chapter 2. Well, I can actually summarize chapter 1. So, for those of you who are just popping in or not really anybody watching tonight. Oh, well, it's probably because I started late. That's what happens when you're not on time. Oh, we have 10 minutes left. I feel like I can go ahead and just hop right into chapter 2. Listen, if you're watching the playback, because there's no one watching right now, so I'm just going to assume y'all gonna watch the playback. If you're watching the playback, this is a book about the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was aggressive. They were aggressive. They had thousands of weapons. They had locations and branches and chapters all over the world. The Black Panther Party was very aggressive. So if that kind of aggression is not cool with you, this is not going to be the book for you. Yeah. I hate to tell you. I hate to tell you because this book is aggressive. This is going to be an aggressive book. And just some aggressive stuff. It's not going to be easy stuff. And y'all, it ain't too late for us to start reading the book about emancipation. It ain't too late. But yes, it is because I've already read the first chapter. So, um, I am. Let's see how long these chapters are. These chapters are really not that long. Yeah, these chapters are not long at all. So, what we will do tomorrow is get through chapter 2 and 3. I think we can do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. York Street. My mother used to tell me, when I was 15 or 16, I had to walk to school, William Penn High. They called it the Dummies Retreat. Pearl Bailey walked with us. Now she's big time. Sometimes after school, a bunch of us would go by Pearl's house on the way home because there was always great big pots of food on the stove there. And I was always hungry. My friends would hide their lunches when I come into school cafeteria because they knew I asked them for some. A lot of the times when Mama didn't have nothing in the house, I'd go down the street and get the stale bread the baker had thrown out. I'd steal it right out of the baker's trash bins, put water on it, mash it up into dough balls, and eat it. I was just like Topsy, you know. I just growed. That was my mother's litany. She performed it nearly every day when I was a girl. She would speak to me matter-of-factly in run-on sentences while ironing a pretty dress for me or fixing my hair or washing out my undies. And your grandmother, Mama, she could never remember to call me Dorothy. She'd say, Frances, I mean Helen, whichever one of you, whichever one you are, come over here. Things like that. And Papa, if I'd ask him if we were going to go get some shoes, he'd say, need some my damn self. I used to wear shoes with cardboard soles, which I had to keep together with safety pins. Once when we were coming home from school after stopping at Pearl's house, it started to rain. The rain soaked through the cardboard to my feet, and the cheap dye I had used to cover the fading on my dress began to run down my legs, and everybody laughed at me. Such recitations were constant. They traveled with us on the bus or in the subway or even into our bed at night where my mother would embrace me tightly. In the silence of our nights, she would summarize her days. They treated me like I was nothing. They must think I'm nothing. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of everything. There was a terrible life out there, she warned. Only in our room was it safe. Only with her. Early on, I came to appreciate how right my mother was and to understand that the only way to endure the pain that lay ahead, the only way to survive the misery of life was to try to eke out a few little victories and never hope for more or dare for more. There was misery not only in being poor, but everywhere, in everything. You know, Elaine, when I was in my early 20s, I used to hang out with a bunch of musicians and artists. And there was this tough saxophone player, Ted Barnett, that I met one day. He played with all the big bands like Duke Ellington's and the Counts, all of them. Like the ones that play at the Pearl Theater, Mommy? Yes, like them. And he, what's that funny sound the bands make, Mommy? Oh, it's nothing. Probably just the horns with those mutes on. But anyway, Ted and I started going out, and after a while, we decided we would get married. I was so happy and excited. What a fool I was. About a month before we were supposed to get married, I had bought my wedding dress already. I saw a friend of ours I hadn't seen in a while. Yeah, Dorothy, he said. Sure is something about Ted. Up and got married last night. Hey, I thought you and Ted had a thing going. It was not merely sad or painful to my mother that she had lost her fiance. What was terrible about it to her was that she had not known better than to have fallen in love. She felt she should have remembered what she always told me. Love is a misunderstanding between two fools. Life did not seem a terrible affair just because my mother said so. I felt it. I felt it in the very house where I grew up. I felt it outside the house out on York Street. York Street was buried in the heart of the black section of North Philadelphia. Its darkness and its smells of industrial dirt and poverty permeated and overwhelmed everything. There were always piles of trash and garbage in the street that never moved except by force of wind, and then only from one side of the street to the other. Overhead utility wires in the disrepair ribboned the skyline. Cavernous sewage drains on the street corners spit forth their stench. Soot languished on the concrete walkways, on the steps and sides of the houses, and even in the air. Rusted streetcar tracks from another time, a time when people who were alive occupied the territory, ran up and down York Street, and there was the nighttime quiet. As the dark approached each night, houses were sealed tight in fear, and York Street became overwhelmed by the quiet, a silent voodoo drum presaging nightly terror, a gang fight, a stabbing, a fire. Our house at 2051 was indistinguishable from the other grayish two-story brick row houses on York Street. It was squeezed with the others on our block, a block no different in color from the rest of the neighborhood. I was most terrified, though, inside 2051. My greatest fear lay waiting for me in our room, my mother's and mine. And in our room was complete darkness and the recognition of nothingness, accompanied by the magnified sounds of mice scurrying and hearts beating in fear. Ours was the back room upstairs, occupying the other rooms along the upstairs hallway, were my grandmother, middle room, and my Aunt Mary, front room. My grandfather slept downstairs on a divan covered with gray slip covers. He remained a nebulous figure to me until he died. For me, only 3 women lived there, and me. My grandmother was a very light-skinned woman with a white person's facial features and a large bosom. She carried a lot of weight on her shoulder frame and very large feet. She hobbled from the weight when she walked, hobbling and always singing or humming old Baptist hymns learned as back in old Virginia and sung now in the First African Baptist Church every Sunday and in our house every single day. Be ready when he come, be ready when he come, be ready when he come, 'cause he's coming again so soon. I don't know that song, so I didn't sing it. He was Jesus, my grandmother's protector from the rats and roaches that overran our house. Jesus was her comforter in washing clothes for more than half a century at a scrub board, in cooking meager meals for her 9 children, and begging on the street for a cup of money. Jesus insulated her from the insults and blows of my grandfather, to whom she clung to the end. Jesus was the balm for her whole life, the life she hated from its beginnings as a child of a white man's rape. Yes, Jesus would come someday and deliver her. Jesus would surely come someday, she said. He will take you in his arms if you've been good and carry you up to heaven, she always told me. But if you've been bad, Satan's gonna get you and take you to hell and you'll burn forever. I've been good, Grandma. I know you have, child, but make sure you don't even think an evil thing, 'cause God knows. He'll send the lightning and the thunder. You can't hide from God. I used to lie in bed at night next to my mother in the darkness of our room and wonder, if God made me like my grandmother said, who made God? And if somebody made God, who made the one that made God? I would be hurled to a place and into a feeling that terrified me. It was a feeling that I was akin to ether, not made of flesh and bone, as though I had no body. I would bolt up in bed to try to force myself back from the distant place, that feeling of nothingness. I would scream out, Mama, Mama, it's that feeling. My Aunt Mary barely spoke because she barely lived. Living was dangerous. She was a beautiful woman with smooth skin, the texture of which she attributed to Pond's cold cream, and which was the color of Georgia clay. She wore a tight hairstyle, pressed and oiled, very little makeup and plain clothes. She was impeccably clean and organized. The inside of the chifforobe in her front room was made of cedar, and she kept a few beautiful plain clothes on proper hangers inside. She washed all her underwear by hand in ivory flakes, placing each item carefully in dresser drawers filled with sachets. Aunt Mary did not seem to worry about God because she lived too carefully to do wrong or be noticed by God if she did. She went out only to work. Every weekday morning, I'm going to finish after this paragraph. Every weekday morning, she walked down the 5 a.m. ugliness of our street with her gabardine coat locked around her body, a cloth scarf wrapped around her hair, lunch bag in hand, off to one more day as a wire clipper on an assembly line at RCA Victor in Camden, New Jersey. She had done that for many years, except for the 5 or 6 years between the times she was let go and called back by RCA, during which she scrubbed white folks' floors. All right. Well, it has been about an hour, and we are at the top of page 21 now. We're now talking about Elaine's upbringing. So we have started a taste of power. Seems like nobody's really fucking with it right now, but we'll see what happens. Um, we will be back. I will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. And since it is Wednesday, it will be Wednesday. I will wear pink and drink wine. So, um, thank you all for anybody that popped in and joined me. Thank you for watching tonight. If you're watching on the playback, thank you for watching. And I will see you guys tomorrow.